Hi guys, look where I am. Today's chapter book is brought to you at the center of Miss Holly's house as I'm on the floor. Just like the old days. Clementine, chapter 8. This is how it starts. Here is a secret good thing. Sometimes I like journal writing at school because I can remind myself of things I might forget when I'm a grown-up. Like that I think I want to smoke cigars and I don't want to get married. Cigars, yes. Husbands, no. What if I forget about those things? I need to write them down so I won't forget. One more thing to remember when I'm old, if I ever do get married, which I don't think I will, is that I only want to have one kid. The first one. She's plenty good enough, even if she is the hard one. Nope, no need for another kid, even if he's the easy one. Although thinking about my brother and thinking about my journal gave me a great idea on Saturday. Last week, Turnip had to get a shot at the doctor's, and so he was so mad about it that my parents let him rent a video and eat gummy worms, even though they're usually the Sesame Street and carrot sticks kind of parents. So I pretended I had to write in my journal, even though I didn't, because it was the weekend. I pretended I was mad about it, so my parents would feel really sorry for me too. As soon as they came into the room, I cringed, my eyebrows down like arrows, and I stuck my bottom teeth out as far as they could go. Here's a picture of what I looked like. Oh, lovely. If my teeth were pointier, I would have looked fierce, like our stone lion. Still, see how mad I looked? But guess what my parents did? Nothing, because they were too busy not paying attention to me. Excuse me, I'm very mad about my journal. May I please have some gummy worms and watch a video too? They stared at me like I had spoken in some kind of secret language that Margaret and I use, which I almost always don't. You let Zucchini have gummy worms in a video when he was mad about a shot, and I reminded him. First of all, my mother said, your brother's name is not Zucchini. Second of all, he's 3 years old. And third of all, my father said, considering all the trouble that you got into this week, I don't really feel like it's a time for special treats for you. Okay, fine, I said. But it really wasn't fine. In the afternoon, my mom had to go to her yoga class, and my brother had to go to a Saturday playgroup. My dad was around, but he was up on the second floor taking care of a plumbing issue. Usually on Saturday afternoons, Margaret and I play together. But now, Margaret was not my friend anymore, so I had nothing to do. Not even eat gummy worms and watch a video. For 3 whole hours until I could go back to get the big polka picture. Then I realized I didn't exactly know where I was going to put the picture once I got it. And what I needed was one of the top windows right in the middle of the building where it would scare off all the pigeons. Margaret's apartment was on the 5th floor, but I didn't think Margaret's mother was about to let a common criminal use her window. The man who lives on the 6th floor smells like mothballs, so I never visit him. And the people who live on the 7th floor were away on vacation while their apartment got painted. Which reminded me. I flew up to the 7th floor to see if the painters wanted help. Nobody answered the apartment door when I knocked, but all the painters' stilts and all their brushes and all their paint cans were all out in the hallway. Uh-oh, that doesn't sound good, does it? The hall hadn't even been painted yet, and that gave me a great idea. I could do it for them. And then when we got back on Monday, they'd smack their foreheads and they'd say, wow, I must be dreaming. They'd wonder who had done such an amazing thing for them. And then I could just walk up to him and say, oh, it was just me. Do you think that's a good idea, to paint an adult building? Oh, Clementine. I was smiling about this all the while I strapped the stilts to my legs. Look at that. That looks fun and dangerous. When I tried to stand up, I fell right over, and then I tried again, and I fell right over. In fact, I fell over 29 times, and that's plenty of times, believe me. So I was all done being on those stilts. On the way down, the elevator stopped at the 5th floor, and I got a little bit excited when Margaret got in and smiled at me. Then 1 second later, me and Lee got in too. Hi, Clementine, we're going to the mall, Margaret said. I turned around and pretended to be very busy pushing all the buttons until they got off. And then I went to my room and I drew a picture of me at the mall with a lot of new best friends. Finally, it was time to go to the coffee shop, and I ran all the way, even though I probably had 2 broken legs from falling that many times. When the clerk brought out the picture of polka dotting, my heart hurt so much that I couldn't even breathe for a minute. She looked so beautiful that big, and I missed her so much. I quick sucked in some air so I wouldn't faint, and then I said, thank you, and I took Polka home, being careful not to fold her, because she would have hated that. When I got to the building, I looked up all the pigeons. The very top of the building was old Mrs. Jacoby's apartment. I tucked the big picture of Polka under my arm and took the elevator to the 8th floor, and I knocked on Mrs. Jacoby's door. Can I please put this in your window? You know, like the window in the middle of your living room? Mrs. Jacoby said, why, certainly, dearie. Without even asking me why. Suddenly, she didn't seem so old and so boring. So I went to the window and I opened it up, and when I looked down, I could see the backs of the million cooing pigeons. They covered every single windowsill, every balcony, every ledge, every brick that stuck out, even if it was only an inch. And in between, I could see the sidewalk in front of the building, still wet from my dad washing it. I guess this was what my dad meant about seeing things from a different angle, but I didn't really understand how this could help anything. Mrs. Jacoby came over beside me and shook half a box of Cheerios onto the windowsill. The pigeons flapped up into one huge gray cloud, and then my brain snapped. Hey! Hey! I ran out of Mrs. Jacoby's apartment all the way down to my very own apartment. 8 times 12 stairs, which equals 96 stairs. Nice math. Dad, I yelled, what if the pigeons lived on the side of the building instead of the front of the building? Would that be okay? That would be great, my dad said. In fact, it'd be a miracle. Except, of course, first you'd have to convince all those 1 million pigeons to move. But if I could, would that solve the problem? You wouldn't care if they messed all over the sidewalk or the side alley? Nope, not a bit. Nobody even uses that alley. That alley could be knee-deep in pigeon splat, and nobody would even notice. Fire away, I'd say. And then I ran all the way back up the stairs to Mrs. Jacoby's apartment, and I went right inside since the door was still open, because that's how fast I was. I'll run for your Cheerios every week, I said. You won't even have to ask me every day if you want. But will you stop feeding the pigeons from here? Will you feed them from the side window instead? I took her into the dining room and I showed her the perfect place. Let's start today, I said, and I sprinkled out the rest of the box of Cheerios. And even though pigeons have tiny, teeny, tiny bird brains, they got the message really quick because away a big flock of them flapped right over. And it was even better for Mrs. Jacoby because this was her dining room. So now she could see those pigeons eating at the same time that she was eating. And then I was all done being there, so I ran back home to tell my dad all the good news. He and my mom were in the kitchen starting dinner, so I told them and I told them and I told them, and my dad kept saying, way to go, sport. And my mom kept saying, thank goodness, now you don't have to spend your whole life cleaning up after those pigeons. They were so happy. My parents were very sneaky too, because somehow when I was telling them about Mrs. Jacoby, one of them slipped me a colander of green beans and brainwashed me into snapping them. But I didn't really care. It's kind of fun to snap beans. Have you ever snapped beans before? I used to have to do that when I was little. Seeing the wow looks on their faces, I think they thought they were dreaming. Unfortunately, they didn't have those faces very long because after dinner, my mother said she'd better get a little work done, and then she went to the cupboard to get her very special markers. You know, the ones that were still in Margaret's room. You used my, not the permanent. Those are for, what were you? It's a really bad sign whenever my mom can't even finish her sentences. They're at Margaret's, I said. They're fine. Nobody even chewed on them. I'll go get them. Oh, no, 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 said my father. We'll go get them. I think it's best that we had a talk with Margaret's mother anyway. You go sit in your room, and I want you to think about all the things that happened. So I went into my room, and I thought about things, like Margaret's mother explaining to my parents about the whole easy one, hard one rule. And look at her here. She's sitting in her room, kind of in timeout, being sad. Poor Clementine. Hey, she did a good thing, though. She solved the pigeon problem. So the pigeon problem was really because Mrs. Jacoby was feeding the pigeons from the front. I don't know. I think pigeons just like statues. I'm not sure if that's the only reason. But it'd be really cool if that solved the problem, wouldn't it? I think Clementine's dad would be extremely happy, too. It looks like we only have 2 more chapters of this book. Have a great day, guys. Maybe I'll finish them both tomorrow. So then we can start fresh with a new chapter book on Monday. We'll see. Bye.